The Kansas City afternoon was unseasonably warm for October. Patrick Mahomes had just finished an additional training session at Arrowhead Stadium and decided to walk a few blocks to clear his head before heading home. The Chiefs had lost their last game, and the pressure was mounting as they approached midseason. As he turned onto Main Street, baseball cap pulled low and sunglasses on to maintain some anonymity, something caught his attention. Sitting on the sidewalk against a brick wall was a small boy, no more than 8 years old, with his head buried in his knees. The boy's shoulders shook with quiet sobs. Patrick slowed his pace, noticing that passers-by were simply walking around the child without stopping. He hesitated for just a moment before approaching. "Hey, buddy, are you okay?" Patrick asked gently, crouching down to the boy's level. The child looked up, tears streaming down his face, which was smudged with dirt. His clothes were clean but worn thin, and his sneakers had holes at the toes. Recognition flashed briefly in the boy's eyes before being replaced by embarrassment as he quickly wiped his face with his sleeve. "I'm fine," he mumbled unconvincingly, his stomach betraying him with a loud growl. "When's the last time you had something to eat?" Patrick asked, concern evident in his voice. The boy shrugged, looking down at his tattered shoes. "Yesterday morning, I think." Patrick's heart sank. "What's your name?" "Marcus," the boy replied softly. "Well, Marcus, I'm Patrick. How about we find something to eat? There's a diner just around the corner." Marcus looked up, hesitation and hunger battling in his expression. "My mom says I'm not supposed to go with strangers." Patrick nodded. "Your mom is absolutely right. That's smart. How about this? We stay right here, and I'll call someone to bring us some food. Would that be okay?" As Patrick reached for his phone, Marcus's stomach growled again, and the boy's resolve weakened. "But I know who you are. You're not really a stranger."
20 minutes later, Patrick and Marcus sat across from each other in a booth at Sammy's Diner, a family-owned establishment that had been serving comfort food in Kansas City for decades. The owner, an older woman named Dorothy, had recognized Patrick immediately, but respectfully gave them space, only approaching to take their order and deliver water. Marcus stared wide-eyed at the menu, overwhelmed by the choices. "Order anything you want," Patrick encouraged. "I'm pretty hungry myself." When the food arrived, a burger, fries, and chocolate milkshake for Marcus, and a grilled chicken sandwich for Patrick, the boy's eyes grew even wider. "Thank you," he whispered before taking a bite that was clearly too big for his mouth. He chewed slowly, savoring each moment. Patrick watched, his own meal untouched. "So, Marcus, do you live around here?" Between bites, Marcus told Patrick that he lived in an apartment a few blocks away with his mother and younger sister. His mother worked 2 jobs, but had recently had her hours cut at one of them. The family was struggling to make ends meet, and today there simply hadn't been enough food to go around. "Mom said she wasn't hungry, but I know she was. She gave her portion to me and my sister, but I left mine for them. I thought maybe I could find some work to do, like mowing lawns or something." Patrick felt a tightness in his chest as he listened. Here was a young boy sacrificing his own meal and trying to find work to help his family. "That's very brave of you," Patrick said sincerely. "But even the bravest people need help sometimes." Marcus looked down at his half-eaten burger. "My dad used to say asking for help was a sign of weakness." Patrick shook his head. "I disagree. I think it takes more strength to admit when you need help than to pretend everything's fine when it's not." After Marcus finished his meal, including an apple pie that Dorothy insisted was on the house, Patrick offered to walk him home. The boys seemed hesitant at first, but eventually agreed. As they walked through the streets of Kansas City, the conversation flowed more easily. Marcus was a huge football fan, and had watched nearly every Chiefs game with his father before he left 2 years ago. He asked Patrick questions about training, about what it felt like to throw a touchdown pass, about what the other players were like in real life. Patrick answered patiently, struck by the boy's resilience and the way he lit up talking about football despite his circumstances. They approached a modest apartment building with peeling paint and a security door that had seen better days. Marcus stopped and pointed up. "That's where I live, on the 3rd floor." Patrick nodded, suddenly unsure of how to proceed. He didn't want to embarrass the family, but he couldn't simply walk away either. "Marcus, would it be okay if I talk to your mom for a minute?" The boy bit his lip, considering. "She'll be mad I was crying in public and that I took food from someone." "You won't be in trouble, I promise," Patrick assured him. "I just want to make sure you and your family have what you need." After a moment, Marcus nodded and led the way up 3 flights of stairs to apartment 3C. He knocked tentatively. The door opened to reveal a tired-looking woman in her early 30s wearing a waitress uniform. Her expression shifted from concern to shock when she recognized who was standing beside her son. "Marcus, where have you—" Before her eyes widened. "You're Patrick Mahomes?" Patrick smiled warmly. "And you must be Marcus's mom. He's been keeping me company for the last hour or so. You've got a great kid here." Inside the small but tidy apartment, Tanya Williams sat across from Patrick while her daughter, 5-year-old Zoe, colored at a small table in the corner. Marcus sat beside his mother, occasionally glancing between the adults with nervous anticipation. "I don't accept charity," Tanya said firmly, after Patrick explained the situation. Her voice was quiet but resolute. "We're going through a rough patch, but we'll get through it." Patrick nodded respectfully. "I understand pride, Miss Williams, I really do. But this isn't about charity, it's about community." He told her about his own upbringing, how there had been times when his family struggled, and how neighbors had stepped in without making a big deal of it. He spoke about the responsibility he felt to give back to the city that had embraced him. "The thing is," he continued, "I'm starting a new initiative through my foundation focused on food security for kids in Kansas City. We're looking for families to help us understand the real challenges people face so we can create something that actually works." This wasn't entirely true. The idea had formed only minutes ago, but Patrick knew it would be by tomorrow. "Your insights would be invaluable, and in exchange for your consultation, we provide grocery support and employment connections. It's a job, not a handout." Tanya studied him for a long moment, weighing his words. Finally, her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Marcus has always said you are a good man," she said. "He watches every game, talks about you like your family." She paused. "What exactly would this consultation involve?" Patrick smiled. "To start with, just a conversation about your experience, what barriers you face, what would actually help. Too many programs are designed by people who have never been hungry." By the time he left the Williams apartment, Patrick had Tanya's contact information and a commitment for a meeting the following week with his foundation team, which he would need to inform about this new initiative as soon as possible. 3 months later, Patrick stood on a small stage in a community center in one of Kansas City's underserved neighborhoods. Behind him was a banner that read, "Chiefs Community Kitchen, Tackling Hunger Together." The center now housed a food distribution program that provided groceries to families in need, a teaching kitchen that offered classes on nutritious cooking on a budget, and a career counseling office that helped connect people with job opportunities. As he spoke to the gathered crowd and press about the importance of ensuring no child in Kansas City went hungry, Patrick spotted Marcus and his family in the front row. Marcus was beaming, wearing a Chiefs jersey with Mahomes number 15 on it, a proper one that had replaced the handmade paper version Patrick had discovered he wore on game days. Tanya stood beside her son, looking healthier and less exhausted than when Patrick had first met her.
She'd been hired as one of the program coordinators. Her experience in food service and intimate understanding of food insecurity making her an ideal candidate. What started as one conversation has grown into something that will help hundreds of families, Patrick said into the microphone. And it all began because one brave young man wasn't afraid to be seen when he was struggling. After the ceremony, as volunteers served a community meal, Patrick joined Marcus and his family at their table. "You did all this because of me?" Marcus asked, his eyes wide with disbelief. Patrick shook his head. "Not because of you, Marcus, because of what you taught me. Sometimes the biggest impacts start with the smallest moments." As Patrick looked around at the families enjoying meals together, volunteers busily serving food, and community members connecting with resources, he realized that the loss that had been weighing on him 3 months ago now seemed insignificant. Some victories, he thought, watching Marcus laugh with his sister, were measured on a scoreboard. The following Sunday, when Patrick threw a touchdown pass and did his celebration, keen observers noticed something different. A small gesture added to his routine, a subtle tapping of his heart and then opening his hand toward the sky. In post-game interviews, when asked about the new addition, he simply smiled and said, "That's for a special friend who reminded me what really matters." In Kansas City, one young boy watching from the stands with his mother and sister, courtesy of season tickets that had mysteriously appeared in their mailbox, recognized the gesture immediately and stood a little taller.